Well, hey, everybody. We are here live today. We're a little bit nervous because we're doing this live, but it's okay. We know that the Lord is with us. I have Natalie Lewis here with me, and she is just awesome. One of the silver linings that has taken place through all of this terrible situation, and God always brings good out of bad situations. He always brings good things, and everything he does is redemptive. And one of the wonderful things about all of this is that I have made some of the best friends of my life. There are people that you meet and you just feel like they're friends and they're going to be in your life for a season. But I think that the moment Natalie and I have met a couple of times through the years, but we've never talked like we have these last few months. And I don't know about you, Natalie, but the moment we started communicating, I was like, this is so easy. Like, I just feel like I've known you my whole life,
Absolutely.
that we have been best friends for years.
Yeah.
And I have, through this situation, I just have the chills all over me as I'm saying that. Like, I just want you to know that you are precious to me. I love you. I believe you. I believe in you. I'm so thankful for your speaking out. I'm thankful for your tenacity in this situation. When I was writing the description for this, I said, basically, join us in an Uncaged with Londa Parker and Natalie Lewis as Natalie chases down justice for her kids. And from the moment you found out what happened with your children, no matter what anybody else said, you started chasing down justice. And I want you to know that it is an honor and a privilege that you would speak with me. I want you to know that I am blessed to know you. And it is just my honor that you're here willing to talk to me today about your story. I'm going to share just a little bit. Many of you have probably already watched several of the videos. Natalie has been on Wake Up and Win. You've also spoken to Laura Lynn, Tyler Thompson, right?
Yes.
And this is your first time to speak with me. Have you been on any other podcasts?
Just Roy's report for the investigation.
Oh, yeah, the Royce report.
Yes.
So, is our sound
hearing feedback?
Yes, I am too. I don't know why that happens with us. I'm sorry, because we already have some people listening. So, do I sound okay now? No.
No, do I?
No, you do not. Let me see if I can adjust something. I don't know why this happens. This has not happened to me at any other time. This is the weirdest thing because it doesn't start out like that.
No.
I'm sorry if you are live right now. We are having a technical difficulty. I'm not sure what to do about it. Let me see if I put on my earphones if that'll help. I'm sorry about this, everybody. But I don't want to talk if people aren't going to be able to understand me. So hang on 1 second. We'll do this. Go like this way.
Does that seem to help?
I hear you very clear.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody.
You can hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. That fixed it. I needed earphones. I wish I would have known that before. Y'all, we recorded for like 2 hours the other day. And when we played it back, you could not hear us talking. Our angles were horrible. Natalie said that it looked like I had recorded her through a Ring doorbell, which we all know is not flattering. So when I read that she said that, I got so tickled. I said, I'll delete it immediately. So we're starting over. Anyways, thank you all for joining us. I'm going to give you just a little summary. And like I said, Natalie will jump in and correct me because we really want to get to some talking points today. And many of you,
Yeah.
like we said, have heard her on the Royce Report. You've read her story on the Royce Report. You've listened to her on Wake Up and Win. You've listened to her on Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson. So we are just excited to be able to talk as friends today about what has gone on through the years and how this has affected so many different lives. I'm going to summarize this by saying, and I know I'm leaving out so much of this story. I told Natalie this is probably going to drive you crazy because I'm going to leave out so much.
It's so long and complicated.
Here's what I'm going to say. Natalie and her husband Natalie mainly was a liaison for parents who were adopting children from an orphanage in Haiti. And Natalie and her husband themselves adopted, how many children total did you adopt?
So we adopted 7 Haitian children directly from the orphanage that Keith Lashbrook ran.
Yes.
And then a year and a half later, we brought 2 more children into our home that were from their orphanage. That through the state of Florida foster care system, they reached out and asked if we would want to adopt them.
Wow.
They were adopted to a different family, and the parental rights were terminated. The family had turned them over to the state. That's a whole kind of private story, but so
that's okay.
by August of 2011, we had 9 adopted children from the same Haitian orphanage.
My goodness. Oh, you guys are heroes. You're literally
we had 12
heroes.
children total. We had 12 children total. Most of our children are grown and heading into their lives, whether they're already they're in college or married, Navy and married, 3 grandbabies. And my oldest is 32. And now we have 13 children. Our youngest is 10 years old. We adopted her. We brought her into our home in 2021, adopted her a few years later through Florida State Foster Care. And that's a whole nother cool story. But so 13 Lewis kids.
My goodness, you guys are literally heroes. I mean, I listen, and I'll say this because I'm 56 years old and I can have 2 of my grandkids for a weekend. And when they leave, I'm just like, oh my goodness. So I know
That's
it is
me at bedtime.
Yeah.
But, and I want to say we don't always feel like heroes. It's been in the trenches often.
Of course.
And
well, that's what a hero does.
Yeah.
That's what a hero does. And so to give a little bit of backstory, the man who had the orphanage, he was a Globe missionary. Globe is a mission sending organization. This man, Keith Lashbrook, had an orphanage in Haiti, and he opened that orphanage in the early 2000s, late 90s. Is that correct?
Late 90s. He started with kind of street kid ministry, started bringing street kids in, and then from there it became an orphanage in the early 2000s.
Okay. So he had already been running this orphanage for several years. He went to North Carolina to visit in 2007, and he attended, 2000.
I want to say 2006 is when his daughter became a fire school of ministry student. So he would have started connecting, I believe, 2006.
Okay. So he visited Fire Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he was staying on the property in an RV. And I'll say this, several young women came forward and said that he had been inappropriate with them. And without going into all the detail of that, we're just going to tell you that when the leadership found out, including Dr. Michael Brown, he kicked him off of the property. He told the student body, but what he did not do is call Globe Missions and inform them that this man was accused of being inappropriate with some young women, which would make it very concerning for the fact that he was going back to Haiti as a missionary. And they did, we know that they had full knowledge that he was with Globe Missions and that he was running an orphanage at the time. And so he goes back to Haiti, and people who met him, when I heard Elijah tell his story the other night, he's one of the former orphans. He's not an orphan anymore. No. But when he was, and even then, the story just gets so convoluted. I'm like, I just want to go step by step. But he was placed in this orphanage by his biological parents because they could not afford to keep him at home. And so, but his story of the whole thing just absolutely amazed me. And that when visitors would come, visitors like you, that they would all the leaders and everyone there would be on their best behavior. So you would not know what was actually going on when you weren't there. And what was going on is the majority, if not all, of these children were being molested either by the staff, which is Keith Lashbrook himself, mainly with the girls, and then his brother-in-law, Vance Cherry, who molested the boys. And
girls, but
yes, allegedly. And then the children were behaving inappropriately sexually with each other because this is what they were learning. And the story gets so deep that it is mind-blowing.
And there were Haitian staff that did abuse the children, and there were boys that had aged out into their late teens, early 20s that were abusing the children as well.
Yes, and which that's the environment they were in. Literally, it was just like when I listened to it, it's like it was just this free for all. It's disgusting what they did. It's horrible, and for the interview that we have referenced many times that took place the other day with Mercy Culture, for them to diminish what happened is one of the most disgusting things I have ever heard.
Yeah.
I really plead with them, as I did earlier today with Dr. Michael Brown. You go and listen to the Wake Up and Win podcast from the other night where Elijah speaks out, and then you come back to me and try diminishing what he had to say, and try to diminish Dr. Michael Brown's role in this situation. So anyway, to fast forward, Natalie and her husband went through a process, and it was a very long process of adopting a couple of children. Then there was a major earthquake in 2010, and Natalie and her husband and different ones, the process was sped up where they brought 40 kids. Is that correct?
41 children.
41 children
came through humanitarian parole because of the earthquake. So out of those 41, that several just different stages in the adoption process. Some were brand new, and some had been waiting for years.
So the process got sped up for them to be able to adopt.
Once I arrived with other parents, we started working on it. It took about 2 weeks to get the approval, and then another week waiting in the U.S. Embassy to get the green light to leave.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's incredible.
There were newborn babies that had just been born on Halloween, October 31st, 2009. The family hadn't even started their home study. So they were quickly getting a home study because that was the one requirement if you were to prove you were in the process of adopting. That and the fact that there had been a commitment, some form of email writing to prove it. So they were probably, for all I know, the youngest babies to come out of Haiti, for all I know.
They were just goodness. How old again did you say they were, Natalie?
They had just a few months old? October 31st. So they were 3 months old exactly when they got on the plane to come to America. They were twins.
So you were traveling with 41 children.
Yeah, and
to
multiple
America, including
parents,
babies. Yeah.
many parents. Cher's a parent that came in. Melissa's ex-husband Jason was there. There were many parents that came and did this hard work. We worked together.
I'd like to thank those of us who've joined us. In the meantime, I'm so glad to see that you're watching live. Thank you for being with us. And you can go back to the beginning later and kind of get caught up on where we're at right now. So we're at the point where these parents have come home with these children. And in Natalie's eyes, before all of this, she loved Keith Lashbrook and just was amazed at he was key in her developing the love that she had for Haiti. He was key in her hero. And so the last thing she would ever do is make up some wild story about Keith Lashbrook. Like, through him, she was able to adopt these children, and she loves her children. And so he was a hero to her until he wasn't. And so once they were able to get these children back, and I'm going to back up just a little bit just to say that several parents had been trying to adopt these children for years, going through the adoption process. And we have since learned that Keith Lashbrook was basically delaying this process on purpose, right? Because the parents because the parents sent money for support every month. And basically he didn't want to lose that money. Right?
Yeah. For multiple reasons.
For multiple reasons. And not to mention that I'm sure that they were afraid for those children to get to America and what they would say when they got here.
They were told not to speak.
Exactly. So from what I understand, Elijah, right, was the first one to start speaking up after they got to the United States. And he started sharing with his mom. They were at the beach, and he just, like, matter-of-factly started sharing with his mom the things that happened at the orphanage. And come to find out, multiple things were happening during this time that parents were starting to realize that something wasn't right. They weren't sure what it was. But when Elijah spoke up, what was found out is that the majority, like we said, if not all of these children had been essayed. And these parents were basically left to just deal with this mess on their own. Well, one of the stories that really affects me, and the reason that people have spoken about Mike Brown during this, is because of the thing that happened with Keith Lashbrook, and also because Natalie went to a kind of a missions class reunion, right? If you want to call it that.
I graduated with the Pioneer class. It was the 10-year reunion.
Natalie went to Brownsville Revival School of Ministry, and she graduated with the very first class. And so that they were having their 10-year reunion in 2009, did you say?
2008.
2008. And Michael Brown was there, and Natalie was very excited to share with him their story about Haiti and how they were adopting these orphans from Haiti and how other people were going to, and through Keith Lashbrook. And she said that, I love how you say the story, Natalie, because you thought he was going to be just super proud and super excited. And, you know, Mike Brown's one of Natalie's heroes, and she's getting to tell him.
And he would, one son, our first adoption of Benjamin, he was home. He was about 4 years old, and I was showing him off to my teacher to show him really to show that this is my ministry. This is what I feel God's called me to do. So I wanted to share that heart with him.
Oh my goodness! And
I introduced my husband and my biological child. We had a family there to show him. Yeah. So he'd be proud.
Yeah, and you're looking for, like, oh my goodness, you're kidding me. And you said he just kind of had a, like,
it was a kind of aloof. Like, he had asked a few questions, what my role was. I think I remember him asking about how many children. So at the time I would have kind of said, maybe it was a dozen at the time,
Yeah.
it grew from there. But,
Yeah.
and then I remember as I'm talking, him kind of just patting me on the arm, like, that's nice, and moving, kind of going to another student to talk.
Yeah.
And when we left, I just felt kind of that sinking, like, didn't feel that gratification that I told my leader that I looked up to so much that I didn't get what maybe I wanted to receive. Like, wow,
So
that's amazing. What a
Yeah.
ministry, Natalie.
I mean, that's huge. Yeah.
Shake my husband's hand. You guys are all like, I'm the what do you want to call it? The little kid in me just did want that. The student in me.
So
And I
strange.
didn't get it. So that is why it stood in my mind. That's why
Yeah.
that moment is gonna stick out to me.
Yeah, it's just right there. So I want to ask you a question about that conversation, and I'd like you to just not just give me the answer, but tell me how you feel about this answer. I want to ask you, so in this conversation, did Dr. Michael Brown allude to Keith? Did he ask if you had had any concerns with the children, any concern with Keith, any concerns with that orphanage? Did he allude to anything that had happened?
No, absolutely not. Nothing. He didn't. He was like
Yeah.
you couldn't read, but a sense of as if what I was doing didn't, in my mind, it was, well, what I'm doing doesn't mean much. Just to realize I already had that feeling on me. When I was in the school of ministry, I have these friends that they were going into great ministries. They were going on the mission field. These wonderful things. And what God kept putting on my heart is I was going to be a mother. And what God kept putting on my heart is I would be adopting children. And when I first traveled to Haiti in March of '98, that last night there, I heard the Lord speak to me. Your children are here. And I remember asking the American missionary that was in charge at the time, not Keith Lashbrook, another man, his name was Larry. And he said, well, America doesn't allow adoptions. There's an embargo still in place, and you would have to go through Canada. And it's just so what did God do literally within the next couple of years? He opened the door to adopt from Haiti. And I know I heard the Lord with that, but that's not the calling that's defined when you're in a school of ministry.
No.
You don't hear people say,
it's not the exciting.
Open your home to the orphans. Be their mother, be their father. But
which is pure religion.
It's what God kept putting on my heart. So I was kind of used to this idea that I'm not someone that's going to go, here's Natalie from Africa. Here,
I raised 200 people from the dead.
Exactly. Because of the environment we were in, fuego.
Yeah.
I was a subdued. I was not the student seeking. I even worked there. And that's why many people in major roles don't necessarily remember me, because I'm the one in the background. I'm okay with that. It's fine. But Dr. Brown did know me. I mentored under him my third year. I worked in accounting right around the corner from him. And I wanted that sense of his approval. And that's why it stood in my mind that it was like kind of a blank, and that pat on and kind of moving on.
Good for you.
And that's why it stood out 2 years later when he did reach out to me.
So I want to ask you this question. If he had said something to you in 2008, if he had said, I need to tell you something that happened whenever Keith was visiting us in Fire. And I'm not trying to badmouth him, but I need to let you know that this happened. And I, out of concern because he has an orphanage. How do you think you would have responded? What do you think that would have done for you? And how would that have changed? How could that have changed the situation? I mean, we don't know if it would have done anything, but how do you feel you would have responded to that?
Right. So I'm a pretty proactive person. I'm someone that had great trust in Keith Lashbrook. but I had a world of respect for Dr. Michael Brown. I would have, and let's just say maybe, it's not the right time, place to bring up something so sensitive. Maybe, hey, can I follow up with you? Can I get your phone number? Do you think you and your husband, I'm in town another day or two. Do you think I could meet up with you, get coffee? Give me that respect that this information. And I would not have ignored. I would have wanted to know. I would have wanted to know who knew all the information, just like I did once I heard in 2010. I would have wanted to know. I would have asked him the same question I asked him in 2010. Did you tell Globe? Did you go to Globe? And he would have said no. I would have gone to Globe. I would have started a very similar process. Now, mind you, I wouldn't have known yet what my children in Haiti were going through, but the majority of testimony of the children of the abuse that took place happened from 2007 to the earthquake in 2010.
Oh, God.
Vance didn't even come to the orphanage until 2007. So it isn't. Now there are accounts of some really rough things going on. I'm not saying that it was ideal before then by any means, but the horrendous abuse by Vance Cherry, it could have been stopped. There's many things that go back in my mind that I play that out of.
Because you guys didn't have a great feeling about Vance Cherry anyways, right? Like you didn't have a thought about Keith, but you didn't have a good feeling about Vance Cherry.
I'd like to say, because of that interview that Michael Brown did with Mercy Culture and that quick downplay as if, the Lashbrook family is a large family. I graduated with Ty and Rod Lashbrook in my class. I was very close to them. They are the ones who brought me to Haiti for the first time in March of 98.
And they're the parents of Keith. They're the parents of
Keith's parents, and they had several other children that went through the School of Ministry. This family was well known.
And they were Vance Cherry's mother and father-in-law.
Yes.
Right.
And married to their youngest daughter, or their only daughter, but she was the second to the youngest, I believe, Hannah. So when I worked in accounting at the RSM, Hannah worked the front desk answering phones right outside of my accounting office. Vance was the IT guy. So he was in and out of my office at any time. He would have been in Michael Brown's office. He knows that Vance Cherry is Ty and Rod Lashbrook's son-in-law. He knows. Right. These things. Yeah. We weren't that big of a school. So I just want to say that Vance bothered me even then. So I'm not going to say that he did anything wrong when I worked with him. He didn't, but there was just.
Yeah, you just get that feeling.
Years later, we ended up finding out once all of this started unfolding, his job before coming to Pensacola, he was a prison guard in Indiana. So when you hear Elijah's testimony and how he would make them be on their knees for hours before their beating and the shaming, what he learned, this was prison guard tactics that he was using on these children.
My goodness.
I didn't know that,
as if they were prisoners, and had done something wrong. Like really wrong. Oh,
so I brought that up because it was the downplay as if just some random guy, Keith Lashbrook, he was only there for a few weeks.
Would he do
until the latest letter from Josh Peters that they had him living on their campus in the RV? That is information new to me from that leaked letter from Josh Peters.
Goodness, tell me about this letter from Josh Peters concerning Keith Lashbrook, because my biggest deal is I feel like everyone except for Tom Berry. And honestly, I would say Bob Gladstone, because Bob Gladstone has basically apologized for any role and he's literally sick over what took place. But the head of fire missions and the person that started Fire School of Ministry and founded it and was the president, Dr. Michael Brown, have largely diminished their roles in what took place. And so explain to us this email from Josh Peters.
So, Josh Peters was one of my teachers, and he has made it clear he doesn't remember me. That's fine. I don't care. I never reached out to any of these men. I believe it was Jersey who did this because she was an FI missionary, and so she reached out to Josh Peters, and she reached out to Tom Berry. Possibly she reached out to Bob Gladstone. It was from there that somebody took it to Michael Brown. You know, I don't know the role there. All I know is she sought them first for some sort of understanding support. And I believe it's mostly Tom Berry that followed up with her, but I do have very heartfelt emails that Bob Gladstone would have sent me, or even together with Michael Brown sending caring emails. Josh Peters, according to Charity, he stepped out from the very beginning. So like watched it. No, I don't believe anybody ever heard from Josh Peters. Yet he decided to write this letter recently, these 2 letters that got leaked, as if he was an expert on our case, talking about as if it was a closed case. Talk about, bad information. That's not only was it actually informative, and I'm glad to have had my eyes on it, but I get to see like his tone and how he treats us in regards to, so there's that. But my problem looking back with Dr. Michael Brown is the ongoing so there was initial contact in July, and then there was no contact for a long time. And I do see, I have an email, I believe was between Tom Berry and Melissa McGavin, and he's stating his frustration. He's asking her if she had heard from Michael Brown. She's saying no. He said this has been months now. He's saying, well, I have gone to Globe. I know in July, I don't know if he tried again, but he said something in this email like Sandy Carter on the Haiti task force not only seems to disregard what he has to say, she almost questions, why are you coming to me? So Tom Berry's frustration, because he's no longer on fire staff, he's just a caring dad. So he's saying like, this is going to be better coming from Michael Brown. And so that is where Michael Brown, so that email was in October. So November 3rd is when we receive an email where Michael Brown is recapping a conversation with Doug Gaiman regarding what Globe said they're doing, and then what Brown said to Doug Gaiman of what he expects, or what he has told his grads to do. And I have an email then to Brown thanking him that he's gone to Globe on our behalf, but letting him know that I am not happy that he did that without us.
Because he did not inform you that he was going to Globe on your behalf.
He did this conference call, like he scheduled him in. Doug Gaiman had not ever returned a phone call of mine. I started trying to reach him in April of 2010. They said he was out of the country. They told me he'd be back the next week. I tried to make Alan Prouty, he's now the president of Globe today, is the first person to take my phone call and hear a crying mother. And by the way, I trusted Alan Prouty. I've always said for years, if there's a good one, it's Alan.
Yeah.
Don't feel that way anymore.
I know.
So my point is, because the president of Globe was Doug Gaiman, I made it a point every week. And Rosemary answered the phone. And at first she was so sweet. And she had held my baby Benjamin at a Globe picnic to meet him. This Globe knew about my son Benjamin was the first to be adopted from Keith's orphanage. He came home in 2006. So these people knew who I was. I'm not some random person coming in and just going to, tear down a ministry. I'm a mama.
It'd be the last thing you want. The last thing.
No, never. Especially the ministry that was there to help bring my children home. So I would call, and it started out friendly, and she would put me through to voicemail. Then she would screen my calls, and then she flat out said, "You're to go to the task force." not so here I am, totally blown off. To this day, I've never heard from Doug Gaiman, the president of Globe, but he takes Dr. Michael Brown's phone call to discuss.
Which you should have been included with, to be
Exactly.
honest. You should have been in on that phone call.
Facebook message. It's the last one I really ever sent to Michael Brown regarding my children. It was in February of 2011 where he had said, it's the one where he asked me, he told me he was still going to Globe on our behalf and telling me I shouldn't post things on social media. It's that message that I have. My response to him, I have a copy of, I said to him, with all due respect, why are you going to Globe on our behalf? At this point, I had not spoken to Dr. Michael Brown since November. So much in our case had unfolded. ICE had stepped in by then. Our children had all been interviewed by then. Keith's adopted children had been removed by the Department of Family and Children's Services in January to that. So much had unfolded from November to February of 2011. He didn't know any updates. He hadn't spoken to me, but he's sending me a message at 11:40 at night telling me I continue to go Globe on your behalf. And
can you please tell us what he told you not to do?
Well, I will first say there's nothing he ever told us what that meant. When he was going to Globe on our behalf, we
didn't know
were
what that
never,
meant. Yeah.
One of the messages we have actually says that from the November conversation that there were confidential things spoken about that couldn't be shared. We're like,
to you guys? Do you think that he ever informed them what Keith had done at Fire?
Well, in the November 3rd conference call is when he did inform them of what Keith had done at Fire. But in one of the messages to us, he's letting us know that some of the things were confidential, talked about, that he couldn't talk to us about. It's if it's a he said, she said, they got information, we got information. With us parents, we never entered into this with Globe to have it turn out as ugly as it did. We thought we were partnering with a reliable ministry to get to the bottom, not only of what happened to our children, but to protect the children in the orphanage in Haiti, which I have information now from a woman that was a social worker in that country. That she just got that those children were not protected. They were taken out of the orphanage. Globe has a newsletter that went out to the parents in, I want to say, September 2010, stating that Sandy Carter had done an on-site investigation, and that one thing they found was the orphanage was too overcrowded. So they began to search high and low for relatives of children. And if they found that they had them, they put them back into the homes. We already knew that was a horrible thing to do. We already knew that.
Wow.
But at least we were believing them that they found relatives. I now have an account from a woman who was a social worker first went there in 94, I believe, up until 2015 when the gang violence got too bad in Haiti. She has like a doctorate in social work. She would travel in the country to train in that area. She would go into missionary orphanages. She helped do home studies. She helped find relatives when kids were aging out. This woman recently heard our story and reached out to me and said, I met some of these children that were displaced from that orphanage. And she also let me know that that orphanage was well known as being a very corrupt orphanage, an orphanage that would buy and sell children, things we had no clue.
Oh my gosh.
She went on to say that during her interviewing of children, that they ended up in government orphanage because either there was no place for them, or when they were placed in the family, they were so unruly from the physical and sexual abuse that they had endured at Keith's orphanage. The families could not handle them. So they ended up in this government orphanage. And she spoke with many of them. And she said those children gave account to what it was like in there and about being put out. So just to jump back at what I'm getting at is, we went to them, not just for our children, and also to see, can we help us partner with us to find counseling. We were in over our heads, not understanding. And again, the average person cannot understand fully what I'm getting at.
No,
I hear
no.
comments from people like, well, people adopt from foster care and their children have been abused. About, of course, I understand that. I have a child adopted from foster care who she has gone through so much in her young life. I absolutely understand that side of it. That's not what we're talking about here.
No,
We're talking about children that were put in a Christian orphanage, and they were being taught Jesus by the same men that were sexually and physically abusing them. As Elijah even said, the tactics, having their clothes stripped down in the open area, that's between the church and the school and their boys' home. I know the area.
You know right where it is. Yeah.
And belts and they're in a horsewhip is what Madam Pastor used. Yes, she is Haitian, but the Americans allowed it. So there are so many levels of, and that's what it's been like for me, raising my children to literally strip this mentality that them still thinking that he's a man of God.
Yeah. And comparing that, with God. Yeah, I totally know what you're saying.
So this is something we've walked out that it's like bringing a group of children out of the worst cult we could hear about in America, and rescuing them, and then helping them relearn everything, like what Elijah. So Elijah in that interview, he's going back to his 8-year-old memory, to which he did so well.
Oh, he did so good. Please, people, please go watch that. Please go watch that. I'm just want to keep telling people.
He was almost 16 years old when he came out of the orphanage, and it's all he ever knew. And he was absolutely he was to never talk. He was never to say a word. And even as children started to open up, it took him years to finally get to a place that he could open up. So
how old was he when he told you that he was essayed by them?
So the children started opening up in 2010. In 2011, my personal children, they were interviewed by investigators. Only the children who were speaking. So, I have a daughter to this day that she never wants to open up or talk. And it has very much affected her life greatly. So,
well, we've heard this in the baby lamb case, right? That's very common that some people just clam up and can't talk.
Yeah. And so, they're adults now, and this is their voice to find. And my son that's 32, he has found his voice. He's a very private man, but he absolutely wants them held accountable. He has found his voice. So at the time,
Natalie, as you're saying that, it makes me think again of Sarah, which we know that you can't compare what she went through compared to what these children had, but it was her own, and it's taken her all of these years to come out. And one of the things that Heather Schott said was that Sarah had drastically changed her story, because Sarah came out and said that he had kissed her on the mouth. So that's drastically, it's so common to tell a little bit and tell a little bit more. And so I want to say right off the top, I believe Sarah, and I believe your children. So I just want to say that
Sarah, that I found my voice again. I had been silent for years, other than in court testimony, and it is because of Sarah. And I absolutely understand. And I tried to make voice to that in the comments section under that Mercy Culture video, and of course, one of their minions attacked me. How dare you? And so, with that said, let me give example. I have a son that is in the Navy now. He's married and they just had their first baby. And he came home in the fall of 2008. And we knew right away things that some things were going on that we couldn't really wrap our head around. And we used to make phone calls to Keith and be like, we just caught him doing like at school, learning how to sneak onto porn during computer class. Like what? We didn't even know
to do that. Yeah.
Access to computers in Haiti. They live in dirt, but yet he can literally and try to cover his tracks. He knew all kinds of stuff. So we had gotten him into therapy. We felt like he was so impulsive that he might have ADHD. And it was through that initial testing and therapy sessions, the therapist was like, this is not ADHD, this is trauma related.
And you weren't sitting there thinking, oh, he's been SA'd, so he's trying to access porn. I mean,
and my thing was, wait a minute. He was with my friends since he was 3 years old. He came home at 11 and he was safe. That my mindset was, but he was safe. Safe. And so to hear this therapist say this is trauma related, I almost didn't believe it. But
I understand.
I did respect him, and we moved forward with that, but not getting it. So then when the children come home from the earthquake and they're starting to open up, well, the first two I go to is my two oldest boys, because they'd already been home for a year and a half. Not only did I need help with translating for my oldest son, because he was fluent already before he came home in both languages, but I wanted to say, well, what do you know about the orphanage? Because this is all new to me.
Yeah.
And so my point is just to get to my second youngest son. He wanted right away to tell me. He was just afraid. So he started with little bit. So he first started talking about, well, this is what the boys would do. And it was shocking. Shocking.
Sure.
Like after school, older boys targeting a fellow student that would have lived in the community and finding an empty classroom. And Samuel's age group of boys, they were to be the ones watching the door while the teenage boys took turns raping the girl. This is the kind of stuff I was starting to be told that was happening on this campus. I'm trying to tell, this is when I'm still like, Keith, you need to know what's going on. And he's shutting me down, not taking my calls.
What did he say when you told him? What did he say when you did address any of it?
So when I found that out, it's one of my first information, besides being told that one of the boys that was starting to act out already at a young age was with a family that in America, and they had younger children. So that's the phone call where I placed to Keith, like, Keith, this is what I'm hearing from Elijah. This is what my kids are starting to tell me. So my girls they wanted to only talk about children at first. So that's what I was going to Keith with, and Vance. We knew at that point what Elijah had to say about Vance. That's when on the phone call, Keith said to me, this is Haiti, honey. If I stopped if I took the time to make a phone call every time one of these kids did something, I would never get anything done. That was one of the last conversations we ever had. We had another one a few weeks later. So
that's like saying boys will be boys. It's disgusting.
And very much blaming it on, that's the Haitian culture. They came from homes like that. We're finding out later, no, a lot of what Elijah has to say. He's giving account to what his life was like once he was placed in the orphanage. My daughter Lydia gave account to what it was like, remembering in her young mind, she can remember the last peaceful day she had in her life was in the yard in front of her home after her biological mom had died, and then being placed in the orphanage later that day. And she said that on Laura Lynn, and my mind would just go there. So that's her memory. Her memory is not, Mom, when I was in my home, it was once placed in the orphanage. And, to have to hear that beautiful daughter of mine.
And she's beautiful. Oh my goodness.
Inside and out. So what I'm getting at is it was little bit by little bit, where my second oldest son, it was by July, he decided to say, okay, Mom, Vance he started to say that Vance would do this thing to the boys, and he did this to Samuel, where he would come up from behind and grab them from underneath to see if they've grown yet. You get what I'm getting at.
I do.
So,
I do.
So he was able to go there. And then so many months later, okay, Mom. So what I'm getting at is they're full of shame. They've been told not to talk, or their family will get rid of them. Also, they're hearing about some other families that I totally respect every decision that every family had to make.
Of course.
Every family had to make the best decision for what they felt in their home and what they were equipped to handle. You know, my dear friend Melissa, she was with her adopted daughter every step of the way, even as far between even getting me involved, still keep communication with her while her daughter was still in the system and getting help. I was able to get passes sometimes for her daughter. She would come stay overnights in our home. Melissa would come to town just to see her. This isn't like Melissa cared deeply, but understand that her daughter had been so abused. Melissa was pregnant. I think she was about 7 or 8 months pregnant when there was such an outburst that the tantrum she had hit on her stomach so hard that it sent her into contractions. So my point is, she had to start looking as a whole of what her home was like.
Of course.
Because of how broken her baby girl was. And to this day, this is something that is so painful to her. Her daughter is now an adult. They are able to have a level of communication. You know, but I'm just saying, each family had to walk this out in a different manner that no one can ever judge. I can be judged maybe because I kept certain children in my home that maybe I should have. Yeah, one of my son, my second oldest son, he needed inpatient help. That is why we started the lawsuit against Globe.
To get some financial help for what you're dealing with.
I was looking at and I was being told by counselors what my son needed. It was he needed such intervention. You know, you're talking $50,000-$70,000 a year for this level of treatment. You're talking insurance doesn't typically cover this type of treatment. You know, we've since walked this out with another child of ours who's been placed inpatient twice, one time for a year and another time for 4 months. So I didn't know in the beginning what this was going to be like. I can look back now and I'm not a licensed psychologist by any means. I'm a very experienced parent of this type of
and you
trauma.
are very trauma informed. I can tell you that. You are trauma informed because you had to be
in order to keep my home in place.
I have another question before we wind things up. And that is, one of the things that really bothered me about the interview that we keep referring back to that Dr. Michael Brown had with Heather Schott and Mercy Coulter was whenever he said this one sentence, and it just went all over me. Several of his sentences went all over me, but this one especially, whenever he said that Keith Lashbrook and Bench Terry have never been charged with a crime. And then he said some of the Haitian workers were, but not them, and made it sound like almost like they were exonerated. And that really, I mean, he diminished their role and then basically we're like, it was those Haitian workers. And I want you to speak to that because, I'm just going to say this much because we can't say what's going on, but there is a break in this case, and there are things happening with this case. And we just want to ask every one of you that are watching this broadcast, and you can leave a comment about this, please be praying for these adults now that were children that went through this abuse, that are now coming forward. Some of them haven't ever spoken to the agents. And we just want to pray for these kids, for boldness, for God to protect what's happening and for justice to come and for justice to flow and be done. And eventually you'll get to hear what's going on. But we do need your prayers, Natalie, the other parents, the other kids, everyone needs your prayers right now that justice is going to be done. So this case is still open. It has not been closed. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, this case has never been closed. I would love to know where Josh Peters and Michael Brown get their information from. Do they reach out to the perps? Do they check in with them? I don't know where they get their inside information for him to say what he said and to minimalize what happened to my children, who he's never checked in on. The last time he would have received any information was February 2011, other than 2 messages, one in 2012 and one in 2013 that I did.
So never like a, hey, Natalie, I want to reach out to you. I know you guys.
Children.
Yeah.
Did they ever get arrested? No, nothing.
No, there wouldn't be distance from it.
If you look at
wouldn't
all
be
the
distance
messages,
from it.
I have all the receipts. He's not asking for information. I'm a TMI person and I gave freely information to him, but he was not asking. And he was saying, I hurt for your children. One email says, I cried when I heard about, I'm questioning if he cried like he did in his Mercy Culture interview.
For himself.
Right. So, but that's the extent of where he would offer up information. He never would say what Globe was saying when he went on their behalf. He never said, specifically, Natalie, did you find counseling? Or how are your children? It was never, but he would act like he just so cared so much. So here we are, jump forward, and he's flippantly glazing over Haiti in that interview. The case never was closed. Let me back it up. It did start out with FBI at first. FBI decided that it was ICE who needed to take jurisdiction. They turned it over to ICE with findings of sexual abuse. ICE picked up the baton January 2011. That is the same month the Department of Children and Family Services decided to move in. They showed up at the Keith Lashbrook's RV that was parked next to a church outside Pensacola, Florida. They removed
he likes to do that, doesn't he?
Children. Yeah, he likes. Well, I could tell. He later had his RV blow up on the side of a highway, like right up. I have the pictures of it. Yeah, it caught on fire. He had his children removed in January 2011. So therefore,
his kids from Haiti.
He had 2 adopted children. One, I believe, was
11. Because by now
he's
back in the States, right? Like he's back in the United States, and he has kids he adopted. So
let me cover that one. So it's real tricky when these international crimes. So the law that you can hang on this is traveling with the intent to harm a child in another country. Okay, that I didn't probably quote it exactly right, but that's the gist of it. So both him and Vance would have been advised very early on, 2010, don't travel. We knew by early 2011 that they were flagged. And I got to see a few other cases play out. Where did they arrest them? They arrest those guys at the airport as they're traveling back, so that's kind of what they hang that on. And so with that said, he never was traveling to Haiti anymore. To the best of my knowledge, he's never, neither of them have ever traveled back. Okay.
So it was like if they started to leave for Haiti, they would be arrested.
Yeah. That's how, they were flagged. So didn't travel, started his ministry all in the United States now. And then Vance went and hid under a rock. And so what happened is once what played out in court with Keith's adopted children it lasted for over a year and a half until 2012, when the state they ruled to terminate parental rights. Dr. Brown, I know you know about that because I emailed you asking.
And
in-
how
in
many
May
children?
2012,
How many children did he lose?
two adopted children. So I emailed Michael Brown in May 2012 asking if one of the fire staff could give account to the lawyer for DCF of what Keith did on their fire campus. Michael Brown did respond and said he would absolutely help. And who ended up stepping in to help was Tom Berry. And Tom Berry connected one of the victims, one of the whistleblowers. That testimony was used in the TPR. Let's get back to trying to downplay as if he didn't say on their campus. The testimony was used in that court hearing to establish a pattern of Keith Lashbrook perving, being a perp, being a predator, predatorial like behavior of what he did to those teenage students on the fire campus. So it absolutely was enough for that judge to listen to in the court hearing.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I would have had, and what I want to jump back to real quick is FBI gave jurisdiction over to ICE. ICE stepped in January 2011. Simultaneously, the state of Florida was stepping in because they found out that his own adopted children needed protecting. There was a battle that played out over that next year and a half where state of Florida wanted jurisdiction. They wanted to take the evidence they had and they wanted to go after Keith. Federal government would not allow it. They wanted jurisdiction over this whole case. So therefore, it turned into this waiting game of letting the federal government work this out. So anything that the state gathered for trial purposes or testimony from his adopted children, it went on to ICE. Everything went to ICE. And one more thing that I'll cover that I've said in other podcasts is what hurt our case the most is because us moms, all of the families that adopted, we're all Christians, all of us. And as this came out, we reached out to Globe. We reached to Keith first, and then we went to Globe, Matthew 18 process to let them work out. Now, mind you, I personally did not go to the police yet, but Melissa McGavin did file a police report in April 2010. She was turned away from our local police department, Escambia County, Florida, because they didn't know what to do with it because the crimes didn't take place. And anybody who's ever had to deal with police reports, if you're reporting something out of that county, they're going to turn you away. So it is very complicated. But Melissa, I want to say, she was the bulldog to keep pressing who will take this case. It is because of Melissa that it ever got in the hands of the FBI. It was not because of Globe.
Thank you, Melissa.
No police
Thank you,
reports
Melissa.
video. So, but what hurt our case is that we were doing the right thing and giving all of this information
Matthew 18.
to Globe. And we should have never, ever given this information to Globe. They covered up. They as soon as they got what they needed, they shut down on us. That's why we had to get lawyers involved.
And they should have gone immediately to the authorities.
They should have calling the police
Immediately.
the very day that we called them. They should have called the police while we were there for our first Haiti task meeting, and they were receiving. They never called the police ever. To be that backing with us, you know, Dr. Michael Brown never reported anything, never encouraged the students that were preyed on fire. You know, all of this is about handling it in-house.
That's right.
And Sandy Carter traveled to Haiti. She could do whatever she wanted when she was there.
I want to say this. My dear friend, Shelby Hill, was essayed by a man in Steve and Jerry Hill's church. The moment that Steve Hill heard that, he called the police. The moment he heard that. He did not delay it. He did not try to hide it. He called the police. That is how these situations are to be handled. That is how they are to be handled.
When you are corrupt, or a ministry that's corrupt, that is the last thing they wanted to do. Because I've since learned of many cover-ups by Globe International. We are not the only one.
Not to mention what
And
we know was going on with Mike Brown.
Firsthand witness that were involved have been involved with Globe and Liberty covering up. So what made no sense to us, and we were constantly like we called it Inception because that movie came out that year. Just
yes, I know
why
that,
aren't
yeah.
they reacting like we are? We couldn't. Even Michael Brown.
Why do you think he wasn't reacting?
Because he's used to telling people when these atrocities come forward to handle it in private with
and as he says, the way he puts it, he walks with a limp. He has his own.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's so convoluted at this point because he's still covering for things in his past. And then you've got this situation. And why would he tell this situation when he's got his own situation? It's just this thing has so many arms.
And how many more victims are out there by these even the ministries in my own circle that I have, whether it be Globe, Liberty Church.
That's right.
Fire, BRSM, the ministries associated, FI missionaries, that the ministries that we were connected to all over the world, Italy, India, Haiti,
so many,
Israel, Ukraine, just if this mentality is always about keeping it in-house, keeping it private, and then the person who either was the parent of the victim, the friend of the victim, or the victim, they're left feeling like they're the bad guy because they want to blow the whistle, but they're being told that's not the right thing to do.
What I want to say that there's got to be a reformation, even in our Bible colleges. They are taught, my son went through Bible college. They are taught to cover for one another, even in Bible college. And it's so wrong. And I want to make this one last statement in that if you are a pastor and someone comes to you and they've been SA'd, or their husband or their spouse, whoever it is, they say that their child has been touched, you pick up the phone and you call the police right that moment. You are not the one to deal with this. You can be there for that family as a support, whatever, but your job is not to figure out if they're guilty or not. Your job is to report it. You are a mandated reporter. This is not something that you take care of in-house. This is a crime. You do not make a child sit with their perpetrator and address it. You don't make a woman sit with her abuser and address it because of Matthew 18. You pick up the phone and you call the police and you find a shelter for a woman if she's being abused. Those are the things that we do. If you are a woman and your child comes to you and says that their father has touched them, and sometimes now it's women molesting children, you pick up the phone and call the police and get out of there. You do not go to your minister to tell them what has happened or to get advice. You go to the police. This is a crime, and there is a way that this has to be handled. This is not a Matthew 18 situation. This is a crime that people need to start going to jail for. And we believe that justice is going to roll and that people are going to be held accountable for what they did in this situation. And I want to say, from those who didn't speak up, who didn't report it, and you think that you don't have responsibility in this, you are wrong. You do have responsibility. Dr. Michael Brown, you have a responsibility in this. You should have told Natalie what happened at Fire. You should have told her. And some of this actually may have been prevented. We're not saying that it would have. We are saying that maybe it could have been. So don't twist our words. Don't say that we're trying to bring down your ministry. If your ministry is brought down, it's from actions that you either did or that you failed to do. And so we just want to end on this note, that this is going to be taken care of. And you can go after people. You can send them cease and desist letters like you have. But you know what? Do you know what would bring healing to this situation? Is for you to reach out to these people and apologize for your inaction. Stop saying that you were a whistleblower in this situation. It was too little, too late. And to this day, it's too little, too late. And I just want to say thank you, Natalie, for speaking out. Thank you, Melissa, for your tenacity, and everyone else who has been involved, whether you were able to keep your children, whether you had to give children that you loved up because you couldn't handle the situation. All of you deserve justice. And most of all, Elijah, Benjamin, your daughter, all of these children who were SA'd, who went on to SA other children themselves. All of you deserve justice, and it is coming. It is going to flow. I guarantee you. I feel it in my spirit and in the natural. Something is being done. When I spoke to this investigator who I did speak to, what is his name again? The investigator with ICE?
We'll say that.
Okay.
The ICE investigator. Yeah.
Yes, the ICE investigator. I spoke with him, and he told me that this is the case that has haunted him his entire career since it happened. It is the case that he wants solved before he retires. So we pray for him that God will give him wisdom. We pray for him right this minute that your Holy Spirit will reach out to him and give him wisdom, God, and help him to stand boldly for truth in this. And we ask you for justice to flow like a river. I feel it coming. I literally feel that justice is coming. There has been a shift in this case for the last several days. I have felt this shift. And even right now, as we are praying together, it is coming. And I thank you, Lord, for what you're doing. I thank you that you're moving. I pray for healing for every single child that was involved in this, healing that only you can bring. We trust you, God. We believe in you, and we love you with all of our heart. Thank you so much for joining us. My phone is about to die, so it's a good time to end. I love you, Natalie. Thank you for sharing. We love all of you. So many of you tuned in today, and I'm so blessed that you have. Please leave comments. Please leave prayers. Please bring this before your church to pray for this situation. Every prayer counts. Every single one of you count in this situation. Cry out for justice. I thank you for all of your involvement. We love all of you. I love you, Natalie, and bless you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll talk to all of you again soon. Natalie and I are going to be doing some more together, so I look forward to it. God bless you, sweetheart. I love you. Okay, bye-bye.